until like 1.
Okay. Next was stop.
No, and then it goes back to snow.
And that's on Friday, not on.
Friday's a good day to work from home. And just-
I'm just making sure it's that, not my screen.
Oh,
Okay.
He's not seeing me.
oh,
I mean, in Canada.
he's in Canada. Oh, yeah. Ask him about the trumpet.
Oh, and there's Diane.
You know that.
Hi, guys.
Oh, thank you for talking, so I make sure that we're working.
Yeah.
I think everybody's turning to.
Oh,
You can hear
Diane,
us?
you look fabulous.
Yeah, my dog is barking though. I'm trying to get myself.
Oh, that's you're fabulous.
I don't have the roll call with me either. I keep forgetting that
No.
folder when I come to these.
Absolutely, yeah,
You
it's
know,
not
don't
like
worry, the
real.
roll call, we can get Ryan and I can do it.
Yeah, it's more like.
We'll just know. Yeah, we'll just know who's on, and we do that, and we can do it zero, okay? Are those the P and Z meetings? Sandy is on her way. She's on her way. Boy, Diane looks
Is
good.
it-
Brandon put them in the envelopes and I got all the way up. So I just want to double check that I double the things in.
Oh,
It's
okay.
okay, just give them to us.
Because
We'll
they
check them.
seem better than I thought they were gonna be.
Is it gonna be a busy day or? What's that? I like
We
that.
had a couple things taken off.
Yeah, we're.
So the things every week,
We're such enthusiastic publics. Oh dear, nothing? Yes.
everything that I start to write reports
Yeah.
on are the ones that get taken off the agenda, and then I scramble to get the report for the one that stays on. And that's what happened.
So, you know what, that's okay.
Yeah.
We're trying to make this all work. We have obstacles that we are facing. And,
Did I announce it the last
no,
meeting?
I know, you told me
I
privately.
just told you that.
Yeah, so you can tell him privately.
I'm zoning officer.
Oh,
So I'm not to myself. but
she didn't do very well.
Is there no way we can keep that?
No.
And you know what, you may have to cast the national.
You have 5
Are we on mute?
unmuted.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planet Conservation and Development Committee meeting. We have some folks who are here. So we have Brian Rogan and myself, Tony Beely, and Maureen Juicy, who's the acting or town planner. Online for our commission, we have Diane Jorsey, Peter Zaragoza, and also Sandy Coppola on the phone as well, or zooming in. And of course, our guest is going to be Jim Mahoney, and also we have Francesco Bones, who is from FHI Studio. And he'll be sort of leading the charge and taking over the meeting from here. And we're all anxious to hear his presentation. So before I begin, are there any other commissioners that I missed at this time? All right, hearing none. Francesco, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And with that being said, I'm going to invite Brian Gridley from RKG to share his screen, because Brian will be presenting much of the technical content for this evening. And I'll give a brief introduction as to where we're at in the process and put that into context. And then Brian will get into all of the numbers and the data, which I hope you'll find very interesting. And then we'll close things out.
Okay.
Okay, so that being said, can you all see Brian's screen? I know I can see it.
Yes, we're good.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So today's February 1st. Welcome to February, everyone. And welcome to what is now our 5th meeting. So we're getting some work done here. If we go to our agenda on the next slide. All right, there we go. And if you could go back to presentation mode, Brian, that'd be great. What we're going to do is we're going to review the economic development trends, and we have a lot of different types of trends and numbers that we gathered and are tracking. Everything from labor force to the type of industries and industry sectors that you have. So there's a lot of interesting material. As we go and towards the end, we'll take some time to discuss what the implications of that are, to receive any comments that you might have about our findings. And ultimately, we want to have a conversation about what it all means for Berlin. What, if anything, we should do to respond to some of these trends in the recommendations that we make in the Plan of Conservation and Development. So this isn't intended. Economic development does not exist in a vacuum. It's very relevant to your land use, your zoning policy, people's commuting habits in terms of how far they have to go for work. And we want to explore all that because it's all relevant to developing a plan for your community for the next 10 years plus. And then we'll briefly circle back to let you know where we stand with items such as the online survey, our vision statement, which hasn't changed since we last revisited it, and talk about our next steps. All right, next slide. Where we're at in the schedule, we're about a third of the way into this process, and we're nearing the end of our existing conditions data collection here, the discovery process. We still are going to meet with you on housing, and we've collected a lot of data regarding housing, and that will be later this month that we will host that meeting. And then at some point this spring, we're going to shift gears and we'll start to actually identify some priorities and develop an outline for the plan and start thinking about development of the plan. And there's a lot of background noise. So if you are not speaking, could you make sure that we're on mute, and hopefully that'll resolve that. All right, next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Brian from RKG. And as a reminder, RKG is our sub-consultant on this project. They specialize in economic development and housing. And they're taking a much deeper dive into this area than my team really has the capacity to do, which is exactly why we brought them on board, because we feel like Berlin deserves this type of expertise. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Brian and Eric Halverson, who's here as well from RKG.
Thank you, Francisco. And my name is Brian Gridley, and my colleague Eric Halverson is also on the call as well. We have a lot of data and information to get through, so we'll try to go pretty quick and hit the highlights on each slide, and we'll break in between sections for comments. Hopefully this will allow everyone to better digest the data and not have to hold on to questions until the end. And just so everybody knows, we will distribute these slides after the meeting, so you have a better chance to dig through all of the data. First, we'll take a look at how Berlin is positioned within the region. It's located in the center of the state. 3 of Connecticut's top 5 most populated cities are within 25 miles of the town center: Hartford, Waterbury, and New Haven. Berlin has strong transportation access within the region. The Hartford line can take you from Berlin to Hartford in 1 stop, or to New Haven in the other direction in 3 stops. Amtrak also runs directly through the town, and routes 5 and 9 pass through Berlin, providing connections to Interstates 91 and 84. This slide here provides a visual representation of where employment is located within the state. According to census data, each dot represents the employment count within each of the state's census blocks. So the larger the dot, the more employees within that block. The major employment corridors are clearly visible, with the largest being down I-91 through Hartford and down the southern portion of I-95. There are a lot of jobs within the more immediate region. Berlin is well situated within this ecosystem. 265,000 people work within a 10-mile radius of the town center, within that ring on the screen there. And over 850,000 within the larger ring within 25 miles. This could make Berlin attractive to residents looking for a variety of work options within a short commute, and to employers looking to locate within active commercial areas. Taking a look at the more immediate region, as mentioned, Berlin is a short distance from Hartford, as you all know, and the first stop south along the Hartford line. The town is situated in the southernmost portion of Hartford County, bordering both New Haven and Middlesex counties. Now digging into some of the data, starting with labor force. Berlin's labor force consists of an estimated 11,338 individuals as of October 2021. New Britain to the north and Meriden to the south have the largest labor force amongst all of Berlin's neighbors, roughly 3 times the size of Berlin's. Berlin is home to 2.5% of the county's labor force. And although the data shows a significant drop since the start of the pandemic, this is not unique to Berlin. We've seen this trend in all the areas we've worked recently due to a reduction in the labor force participation rate. The Connecticut Department of Labor includes all civilians over the age of 16 in their labor force calculation, including employed and unemployed individuals. However, if somebody has not been actively searching for work within the past 4 weeks, they're dropped from the unemployed count. So this drop in Berlin's labor force is attributed to a significant drop in the count of individuals qualifying as unemployed because they haven't been actively searching for work. So the actual number of eligible workers is likely higher at this point than the number shown. Economists suggest that several factors may be contributing to this, including early retirement, lost immigration, lingering COVID apprehension, increased childcare responsibilities, and discouragement. Employment growth has been impressive in Berlin over the last decade. You can see they top the list here. Despite decreasing employment levels across the state and stagnant levels across the county, it's actually grown by 3% in Berlin. Stronger growth than all of the neighboring towns. In fact, only Meriden and Rocky Hill and Southington saw increases during this time. The unemployment rate is also lower in Berlin than the county, the state, and the city of Hartford. As of October 2021, it was 4.3% in Berlin, less than half the rate in Hartford and a full percentage point lower than the state and county rates. Looking into pandemic-related effects to the economy, Berlin's labor force appears to be among the least affected within the immediate region. The unemployment rate within the town is just 1.1% higher now than it was in 2019 prior to the pandemic. Only Newington saw a slightly lower increase during this time. The county and state both increased by 1.6% overall, while Hartford and New Britain experienced increases of 2.6 and 3.1%. The commute flow, according to census commute flow data, more people commute into Berlin than out of it for work each day. Over 11,000 outside residents come to town for work. 1,100 residents both live and work in town, and 8,700 Berlin residents work elsewhere. An increased daytime population creates additional retail opportunities as more people are spending more time in town. 1,000 people. A jobs to housing ratio helps to identify job-centric areas versus housing-centric areas. Berlin is relatively balanced in this respect, with 1.5 jobs per housing unit per 2019 census estimates. Berlin's ratio lags behind some of the larger employment centers within the state, as expected, such as New Haven and Hartford, but it is ahead of others like Danbury and Waterbury. So it does seem to be pretty well balanced within the town. Moving on to property taxes, Berlin has one of the lowest mill rates in the region. The town's tax rate is far lower than New Britain and Meriden. This could be used as an economic development tool to incentivize businesses to choose to locate in Berlin. The residential share of real property in Berlin is higher than most of its neighbors, but digging into the data reveals that the town's commercial grand list has increased since 2010 after initial dip across all categories from 2010 to 2015, likely due to the Great Recession. Recent commercial development activity suggests momentum will continue in this regard, which will help reduce the tax burden on residents. And according to the town's assessor database, the assessed value of properties totaled 2.1 billion in 2021. Just under 70% of this was residential, nearly 19% commercial, and 6.5% industrial. And we'll take a break here to discuss some of the regional trends before we move to look on into some more local information. Just want to pause and hear feedback. There are questions up here, but if you have any additional thoughts, please do share them.
Commissioners, any questions at this point for our presenter? Anyone online?
No questions from me. It's fascinating, though, what your statistics are. Very interesting.
Okay, it looks like you have the green light to keep going.
All right, we'll keep moving. Moving on to some more local context. This is the same map that we viewed earlier, just zoomed in of the employment nodes, just to highlight the active commercial areas within the town. The highest concentrations of employment are in the northern part of town, specifically near the train station along Farmington Ave and north of that corridor. There's also a visible corridor of employment that runs along the Berlin Turnpike. There are high concentrations of employment just outside of the town borders as well, in New Britain, Newington, and east of Berlin, close to the I-91 interstate. This is a similar map, but shows the business locations of all businesses on the Economic Development Department's list of active businesses in 2021. This further highlights the town's corridors of economic activity. The red dots represent restaurants and the yellow dots are retail businesses. The green dots are all other businesses. Farmington Ave is clearly the town's strongest commercial corridor and where the vast majority of these businesses are located. The largest share of businesses are industrial in nature, as you can see in the chart on the left here, followed by home services and personal services businesses. Retail stores and restaurants combined to make up 19% of all businesses in town. And according to the list, there are just over 500 businesses in Berlin. Here's a map of the top employers in town. The town's largest businesses follow a different pattern geographically, with most located along the Berlin Turnpike. The top 10 employers account for 3,834 jobs in town, which is just under a 40% share of all jobs. Eversource is the largest employer with 1,200 employees, which is over 10% of the town's total. There are 3 manufacturing businesses in the top 10 list here: Assa Abloy, Tom's Corporation, and Parker Fluid Control. You'll see on the next slide that this is the leading industry in town, accounting for nearly 20% of the town's jobs, 2,000 of the 10,000 plus jobs. Healthcare is the next leading industry with 1,400 jobs, followed by retail and government. Industrial uses are important to Berlin's economy, which is clear from the employment by industry breakdown. As we noted earlier, the largest share of businesses in town are industrial in nature, and the industry totals further illustrate this. Manufacturing, transportation, and warehousing, construction, and wholesale trade are all among the town's top 8 industries by employment in 2021. And these 4 industries alone combine to employ almost 40% of workers in town. This slide further demonstrates this. The town is home to a higher share of jobs in industries that cater to heavy commercial and industrial activity than workers in those industries. For example, 12% of resident workers work in manufacturing, while 22% of Berlin's jobs in 2019 were in this industry. The town's workforce significantly lags the resident workforce in other industries like finance and insurance, professional, scientific, and technical services, and healthcare. This highlights potential opportunities for industry growth, as there is already a strong labor pool in town. So if businesses come in, there's a labor pool that they can pull from to hire. This is where residents work. Looking at commutes, most of Berlin's working residents have relatively short commutes, with 56% traveling less than 10 miles. Most commute north for work. Hartford is the leading destination, followed by Berlin and New Britain. Around 11% of the town's workforce works in Berlin. Hartford is the only destination higher than Berlin itself. This chart shows employment growth. We wanted to highlight growth prior to and since the start of the pandemic. 10 industries were growing prior to 2019. The strongest growth was in the transportation and warehousing industry. Just 2 industries have grown since 2019. Transportation and warehousing, again, accompanied by utilities. Not surprisingly, the accommodations and food services industry has been hit the hardest since 2019, losing over 1/5 of its jobs. The professional and technical services industry again shows up as a potential growth opportunity in town. It had the 2nd largest growth prior to the pandemic. The location quotient highlights a local economy's strengths within a larger region. So this chart shows the positioning of each of Berlin's industries within Hartford County. A number of Berlin's industries are clear leaders within the region, including manufacturing, transportation and warehousing, construction, retail, and wholesale trade. The professional services and finance and insurance industries are growing and emerging within the region. This presents a great opportunity to bring more high-paying jobs into town. As already noted, the residential workforce is strong within these 2 industries. Now looking at the smaller employment sectors within the larger industries. Of the top 10 industry sectors in town, 3 are within the manufacturing industry. The leading sector overall is skilled nursing facilities, which employs 809 people. While this sector has decreased over the past decade, the next leading sector has seen strong growth, more than doubling in size. General warehousing and storage jobs. They now total 611 jobs in town.
Yeah, one thing Brian, that we're going to mention on this one was that the nursing services, obviously not related to direct, nursing homes, but more, we have these nursing employment agencies and home health employment agencies that are based in town that are significant employers. So that's what's really driving that sector in Berlin.
Thanks, Jim. And this chart here just highlights the growth since 2011. Again, the general warehousing and storage sector far outpaced all other sectors in terms of growth. It added more than 4 times the number of jobs in any other sector, and it alone has accounted for 90% of the overall industry's growth since 2011. Looking at the other growth sectors, 4 of the top 10 are in manufacturing, including the highly specialized pharmaceutical preparation sector, which serves New England's growing life sciences industry cluster. And we'll now take a look at some development, some local development activity and trends. Did we have a comment?
Yeah, Brian, can I ask a question, please? You said that the transportation and warehousing sector was up. It showed growth of plus 9.4%. But what exactly does that encompass?
This general warehousing and storage sector?
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up on the website, but I believe it's in, going back to the overall industries, it falls within the wholesale trade category, NAICS code 42. Or sorry, 49. It falls within.
Because that's impressive growth, but I'm not sure where that growth is.
The definition for that sector is mostly around companies or businesses that are engaged in like the general operations of just merchandise warehousing. So they like the handling of actual hard goods. So storing them and then distributing them wherever they need to. So in some cases that might be something like could be like a last mile delivery and storage warehouse where they're storing things that are coming in to Berlin or to the region, storing them there and then distributing them as orders come in or as stores need them. That's generally what falls into that category.
Okay.
And I think
guess
sorry,
I
go
guess
ahead.
I was impressed by the growth in that sector. So, but looking at it the way it's categorized, I'm going through the businesses in my mind, trying to figure out which businesses are experiencing this growth. And I'm trying to be specific, and I'm trying to go through the list of the businesses, and I'm urging my other commissioners to help me. I just don't know
Whose name falls under that
yeah,
category.
whose name is in the category.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. I can't remember. I could research it, but I think, there was the successor to Hartford Direct out on Worthington Ridge that has the significant warehouse, and they were doing fulfillment. They do similar warehousing type of operation out there. That's a pretty big operation. There's some warehousing at, some warehousing tenants at the old, at the Corbin and Russwin complex in the lease space there. Some big chunks of space there.
All right. Okay.
I think Whiteout Drive has one too, has a newer one too.
Yes.
To replace somebody else, I think.
Yeah, I was just trying to imagine where it was. And
Some of the old businesses are.
Yeah.
Behind the old driving range. You guys all-
it could be, yeah. All right, well, thank you. I didn't mean to throw a wrench in the wheel turning. It's just, it piqued my curiosity, especially when I see this very impressive chart.
That's great. That's why we're here. We're happy to answer, as many questions as you have. And I would just say too, this trend, particularly with the pandemic, has really accelerated where we're seeing growth in some of the higher level sectors like Brian talked about around transportation and warehousing, but then in these more specific sectors like general warehousing and storage, there are so many companies leading up to and then accelerated through the pandemic that are looking for these storage and distribution facilities, last mile facilities, not just Amazon, but a lot of companies in general. So when we see Berlin and kind of this centrally located area of Connecticut within close proximity to a lot of larger population centers, and then with the transportation assets that Berlin has, I'm not terribly surprised to see some growth in this type of sector. I think it's following trends that we've seen in a lot of other communities, not only in Connecticut, but in our other work throughout New England. So.
All right, terrific. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
one thing we'll get into the next section is really that, a limitation is that we don't have large, sites to accommodate million-square-foot warehouses and such. So it's typically smaller warehouses than the big, Amazons and such that you read about.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, I'll keep it moving here. Looking into development patterns now. So we'll now take a look at some of the localized development patterns. Here's a map of the town's commercial and industrial zones. Berlin's commercial districts are focused around the Farmington Ave and Berlin Turnpike corridors. The industrial zones are primarily in the northeastern part of town and along the rail line. And when it comes to new development opportunities, there are really three options highlighted here on the slide. The targeted economic development areas, which we'll discuss later, vacant land, which is in limited supply and holds many existing constraints for development, and redevelopment of existing older commercial and industrial properties. Here's a look at the existing commercial and industrial land use, which largely mirrors the zoning map. But we should note that this is the totals here represent the current land uses within Berlin as designated by the town's assessor. So they do not represent the zoning. Commercial uses occupy 969 acres, total over 374 million in assessed value, and bring in 386,000 per acre in property taxes. Industrial uses, on the other hand, occupy 1,200 acres, total 228 million in assessed value, and bring in 190,000 per acre in property taxes. And here's a list of the top 10 taxpayers within Berlin. The town's top 10 taxpayers, they contribute to 14% of the overall taxable property. The top taxpayer is Rocky River Realty Company, and they account for 9% alone. Their largest holding is the 114-acre parcel pictured here, which is the home of Eversource's regional headquarters, the town's top employer. A sizable portion of Berlin's industrial and commercial building stock has been built since the year 1980. So it's in relatively good shape. 28% of commercial buildings and 30% of industrial buildings have been built since 1980. A larger share of the town's commercial stock is aging. Now looking at the industrial market and some of the trends, Connecticut's industrial market has remained strong throughout the pandemic, thanks to the strength of e-commerce, as we were discussing a little bit earlier. This has been a national trend, but it's also true within Connecticut. Brokerage projections show positive signs. Inventory is projected to increase across the board. Vacancy is projected to decrease, and construction activity is projected to increase. There's been a lot of recent market activity within the region. You can see a list of some build to suit and leases on the slide here. Amazon alone is leasing or building in 4 separate communities nearby. Now, looking at the regional commercial market, it appears to have been relatively stable throughout the pandemic. Class A office rents are above $24 per square foot and have stayed relatively stable, as have Class B rents, which are just under $20 per square foot. And retail is just shy of $19 per square foot. Rents have been increasing within the retail sector. Office vacancies are around 18% regionally, and retail vacancies have climbed in recent years to 11%. And this is for the larger regions that are pictured here. That's the end of the local section. If anyone wants to break for additional comments, we can take a break. If not, we can move forward.
Just think, one of the, some of the things that I see when I'm looking at the presentation, I think the last time last couple of times we were doing the plan of conservation and development, we were talking about really making an effort to attract big box retailers on the northern part of the Berlin Turnpike. And, of course, we saw the redevelopment of Brickyard Plaza and stuff, but obviously not such a big attraction at this point with the changes in the retail sector. So I guess we should be we should be thankful that we have that strong manufacturing sector that is, held steady and grown over that period of time. And, I think, the trends again, we're seeing are now the pickup in the commercial, all kind of categories of commercial businesses also. So that, got to watch what you wish for. And we also, obviously never really developed a strong office rental market. Although we have, like with Eversource headquarters and such, we have a significant amount of office space, but not being directly on the interstate highways where most of the Class A office was developed. But now seems to be that we're developing more strength in the smaller office segment recently. So those are kind of my anecdotal observations.
Yeah, Jim, if I could just add quickly, definitely the largest area of need has been the industrial. I think that's partially our manufacturing contractors, but also the warehousing use. A lot of the office we have tends to be more single operators and or owned locally, which has been great. The retail growth as well. So I think it's nice. We've seen the growth in all different segments of the economy at this point. And yeah, we're not a big office location, but considering the economy right now, it's probably a good thing. Because unlike a town like, say, a Farmington or a Glastonbury, we don't have big empty office buildings.
And just looking at what you have on the screen as far as the questions go, I mean, I think for the second and third question, the answer would be absolutely. And for the fourth one, I mean, we have one good thing, like you mentioned earlier, is our location. We're easy to commute to, even though I would like to see. I think it would be nice to have people be able to work in town and live in town. But I do think that we have some nice sites left for industrial. That's definitely something I think we should focus on: the industrial, the manufacturing, medical, finance, insurance. Just a few to think of would be the industrial land behind Peterbilt. The Golden Triangle. I know I recently became aware that some land down by Route 9 on-ramp by McDonald's. I know a lot of it's wet. I believe there's a good 60, 70 acres over there that abuts Route 9 and easy access. I think that's industrial or commercial. And then I know we still have some acreage left over on Forrod at the corner of, I believe it's Norton. So I think those are some spots that we could focus on that have some acreage that could be used wisely for larger industries that could really make a dent on that tax burden.
And plus, they would also be easy on, easy off because of the highways or the main thoroughfares. And one thing that I've thought about as you look at just all the different questions on how to attract more businesses or what kind of businesses. I think, and Brian, you touched on this as well, I think the healthcare industry will continue to grow. More and more, a lot of the healthcare are sort of getting away from the hospital setup and more to the in-day surgeries. So you have a lot of facilities that you can go to that are not at the hospital, but you can have your meniscus repaired or you can have your hand operated on, and they're go in, you have your surgery, you go home.
Those are high paying.
And those are high paying professional jobs. They attract a lot of doctors and nurses and stuff like that.
Look at like what Parker Healthcare's been doing. They built that one on the for Waterbury there. They built on Queen Street in Studdington. So Hartford Healthcare is expanding, but what also is happening is the Yale Bridgeport Greenwich is moving more north. And that might be something to look into because they're gonna want an ambulatory surgery center around here as well to compete with the Hartford one. So that's something we might wanna, be on the lookout for, even quite honestly, be a little aggressive to try and get them in our area.
Yeah, especially if they have the easy on, easy off, it'd be easier for people to find. And the other industry or business I would like to see attracted to town, I'm sure others have spoken about it, is that we basically have one grocery store. And it makes people crazy that we can't seem to find another grocery store. They keep coming to all the towns around us, but we don't have like that competition or that freshness to be able to choose between, your local Stop and Shop and or Whole Foods or whatever. So, and I've had a lot of people chewing in my ear, telling me that we need another grocery store, but of course you got to be careful where you put these things because you do want it to be successful, but I want to overrun the town.
Just sitting on your point of easy on and easy off, I think something that maybe we should work into considering with this is, I know whenever I have to go into some areas like Farmington, for a doctor's checkup or whatever, I'm losing my mind sitting there in traffic.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe we should consider our roads and I know always get too confused, Deming versus Christian, but sometimes maybe there's room for expansion of the road where you got a third lane, an easy turnoff lane, or something that we could consider to help ease that traffic at some of those major points.
Yeah. No.
I think it would be attractive for the businesses. They
Yeah,
never find out.
exactly. The traffic, be interesting. People would want to go to that facility. They would choose that over maybe Plainville or a New Britain facility because, I could just get there and go home. Peter, you have anything you want to add? We're dominating.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna echo Chris's point about, I don't think moving forward that office space is gonna be the most critical need, especially with generational changes. I mean, we had the pandemic, people working from home, but I don't think that's something really going away. And I don't think the workforce who have the option to work from home want that to go away. So focusing on healthcare centers, like you said, service centers, that's great, a great suggestion as well with manufacturing to bring people who are going to have to do tactile jobs into the town. I guess the question we should ask ourselves is what's going to make the town attractive for these people to want to not only work here, but potentially live here as well.
See, that's the flip side. That's the trick, is to keeping it still the town.
Yeah.
And away from city stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Diane, did you have anything? I know she was online and I guess not. Okay.
No,
All right.
no, thanks. Yeah.
All right. Terrific. Thank you. All right. All right. So Brian, you still have us. And I don't know, maybe we answered all your questions, but in a strange order.
No, these were all great comments, and the commentary about the potential development sites available leads well into the next section. We'll dig into some of those in more detail. So we'll look at some recent successes in business development activity within Berlin. So here's a list of local economic development organizations. These groups play a large role in promoting the town and overall region, helping bring new businesses to the area and support existing businesses. At a more local level, the Berlin Economic Development Commission and Greater New Britain Chamber of Commerce focus on efforts at this local level, while the Metro Hartford Alliance is a great resource regionally. Here's a look at recent business development activity. There were 306 new jobs added in 2018 and 2019. There were 12 new businesses, 7 relocations, and 9 expansions. And then on the right side, you can see the activity in 2020 and 2021. There were 294 jobs added, 27 new businesses, 1 relocation, and 15 expansions. So clearly a lot of activity has been happening within the last 4 years in the town. And you can see geographically, a lot of this activity was focused around the train station and northern parts of the Turnpike. More info on business development activity regionally. Berlin's business development activity tracks closely with Wethersfield and Rocky Hill. The region has seen a progressive uptick in business starts since 2015. Now we'll move into looking into specific sites. Some may be familiar with the targeted economic development sites, which were mentioned earlier. These were created in the 2003 TOCD to encourage and support development in places where the proper infrastructure and systems are already in place, rather than greenfield development. And you can see a map here of all 13 of these sites within the town. There's been significant progress at many of these. We've highlighted all of the activity within the next 2 slides at each individual site. I'll go over some of the more significant news and updates. Of the sites highlighted here, number 2 has seen the most success. This is around the train station. This area has obviously been highly publicized. The Steel Center project has been started by Newport Realty. Many new businesses have located here. Streetscape projects have been completed, and Deming Park was redeveloped. Sites 4 and 5 at the intersection of the Turnpike and Deming Road have also seen a lot of activity as well. The mixed-use Turnpike Ridge project is underway, and 2 additional projects are in regulatory review. Proposed to bring 306 additional mixed income rental units and a hotel and convenience store to that particular area. Then looking at the remaining sites, numbers 6 and 13 have seen the most significant activity of the remaining ones. The Deming Ridge project has been approved at site 6, bringing 88 mixed income housing units, and the Stick Village development is almost complete at site 13. 4 of the 5 buildings are complete there, with the majority of commercial spaces leased.
Just to mention that the Deming Ridge project did get approved by CHFA last week. So their financing is now in place. They plan to move forward very soon with construction of that project.
Great. Now here's a map of the multiple vacant parcels. Many fall within TED sites. The sites highlighted in red have applications pending. There are significant environmental constraints that you should be aware of, and they increase the difficulty of new development at many of these parcels, as well as many of the TED sites that were highlighted. So now we'll take a look and highlight some of the largest development projects underway. Kensington Village, of course, it's the large TOD plan surrounding the train station. It has perhaps received the most publicity. Development efforts, again, led by Newport Realty. The Steel Center, which we just mentioned, is the first project in the plan, and it is currently underway. The development program includes 76 market rate units and 19,000 square feet of office and retail space across 5 separate buildings. Construction broke ground in late 2020. Another project that broke ground in late 2020 is Turnpike Ridge. It's another large project mentioned earlier. The $13 million mixed-use project will include 72 market rate apartments, plus 18,000 square feet of restaurant and retail space. And also Newport Center, another development worth mentioning, by Newport Realty on Farmington Ave. This is an example of a success story. It was a long vacant space that was acquired and transformed into a 3-story, 24,000 square foot mixed-use building, and it's now fully leased. So as you can see, there's lots of development activity happening in town. And a few other efforts that are underway. Highlighted here is the tax abatement program. The town adopted this years ago, and it's been revised over the years as market conditions have changed. Under the current program, abatements are offered for up to 10 years for projects involving a select list of uses that are listed here. And this tool aims to reduce the burden on property improvements that typically increase the value and the taxes on the property. Another program, the Building Facade Improvement Matching Grant Program, it just ended at the end of 2021. It was a success. It resulted in 47 facade improvements in targeted areas. You can see on the map here, it was all along Farmington Ave, the commercial corridor there, with the highest concentration surrounding the train station. And here's an extensive list of the ribbon cutting, groundbreakings, and expansions from 2021. There have been a number of successes to celebrate in Berlin. And I believe that's it for the slides that we have. So we can move on to some additional comments.
I mean, just for some thoughts on sort of the next steps and why we wanted to ask, probably more so on this slide than the previous one, some of the questions is, you know, we're going to be working with you all and also FHI on thinking about the goals around economic development, but, you know, probably more importantly, the strategies that align with those goals over the next, you know, couple months here. So some of the questions that we have on this slide are a little bit more forward thinking or future thinking about, you know, any ideas on some of those goals, but also, you know, what locations should the town be focused on? Are there any other economic development tools that we should just explore even conceptually? Are there any regulatory tools like zoning in different parts of the town that you think maybe we should take a deeper look at or maybe need to be explored, you know, in a future planning process, like a corridor study or something like that? We'd love to hear some thoughts on that as we start to, you know, formulate the next steps of our process. And I know the TED sites have long been a focus, I think going back to 2003, maybe even before that. And as Brian mentioned, you know, there's been a lot of activity in those sites, which is great, but it also means we're running a little low on vacant and developable sites. And I know in talking with Chris and Jim and Maureen, some of the sites that are left, as Brian mentioned, do have some environmental constraints that, you know, while it may look like a lot of acreage, in reality, when we start to account for wetlands or other environmental constraints, the actual developable area or acreage might be a little low. So, you know, does that lead us down a path of starting to think about redevelopment around, obviously that's what's happening in and around the train station, but around some of the corridors? Are there kind of older, outdated commercial areas or, you know, old strip malls that maybe are on large pieces of land that we could start to think about, you know, does that become a mix of uses or some other new use? Just some way so that we can be a little, so we can start to be focused when we think about strategies.
Yes.
So that is a lot of wetlands.
Yeah.
A
And
ton.
what do we do as a town to try and, you know, put ourselves out there that we have certain, you know, lots or whatever available for either commercial or industrial, et cetera. And I'm wondering if, you know, with so much green use, green manufacturing and all that going on, if there's any way to try and dip into some of that, to draw some of that into town, which are more high paying jobs as well.
Also, just wondered, I remember there being something about clean earth, wanting to clean up that land behind McDonald's, everything becomes trucking in and cleaning. Is that still on or did that?
So can I just explain to the committee members? So the
Yeah, sure.
Clean Earth, the way the zoning regulations are written, they got wetlands approval for the fill. So therefore they don't need planning and zoning commission approval. So they're moving forward, but the commission, it was taken from the commission's agenda because it doesn't require commission approval. So the proposal is to prep the land for future development,
So that will be,
developable
Developable land.
industrial land.
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, that project that's a brownfield site. So the town has been working actively with the property owner and Clean Earth. And we've come a long way. We got a little ways to go. State, and with a lot of encouragement from Chris, set up a new pilot program for reuse of treated soils that Clean Earth would want to use to fill the site. And the legislature approved the pilot in 2021, and we're waiting for them to roll it out. We got an additional grant to do additional environmental testing to support the project. We're hoping to finish drilling some of those wells in the wet areas next week, and then we're trying to support Clean Earth. In the meantime, the town has forbore on some of the taxes, but they are making progress payments every month on taxes. So it's a partnership. It's a long-term proposition, but we're moving forward.
Good to hear. I mean, I guess.
If I could add as well, we actually, Berlin is part of membership of something called the CT Site Finder. So any commercial properties that are on the market or some that aren't, get up on that. We try to do as best we can with that. Actually, in fact, this week I should be adding 3 new properties which have vacancies. I'm just waiting to hear back from the property owners, including the old vacuum store on Mill Street, and a couple others. So we definitely get the information out there. There has been a lot of activity, particularly on the industrial side. The biggest issue we have is right now, our biggest industrial sites are, I think was mentioned, behind Peterbilt. There's a lot of wetlands, the Golden Triangle. As of right now, the zoning is probably not the best for what the marketplace is. Connecticut Sand and Stone property, we're working with them. And the other piece we have is the Yankee Gas piece, which is challenging because it has to be purchased by one person. They can't be split up into smaller ones. So there is interest. We're doing some things, and hopefully it'll continue on. But I know that at least for me, some of the information so far has been great because it mirrors to some degree people I've been talking to and some targets that I have. Oh, and one other thing. Because we have been kind of locked down during COVID, I've actually been doing and will continue to do, I'll call it windshield tours with folks. So I had some commercial real estate folks from Hartford literally jump in the car, tell them about what's happening, everything from Newport Center, Steel Center, Turnpike Ridge. So I plan on doing more of those as I get an opportunity to let people know. That way they keep us in mind wherever and whatever they're looking for in clients.
Chris, I know that economic development has been doing an excellent job. So kudos for you on that. How about that property that's across from the Golden Triangle? Remember the abandoned gas station? What is it, 12 acres over by Middletown Road? Over by where the road is?
Yeah, it's about 6 acres, probably 2 to 2.5 usable because of wetlands. My understanding is it changed hands, but no one has approached my office or I believe the planning and zoning office at this point on a future use on it.
Okay.
So I know there are federal and state guidelines, but as far as, flexibility, maybe there's a way to help these industrial spots mitigate the wetlands so that they can get more developable land. That's a concern. Obviously, that would be more of a wetlands issue than a zoning one.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue too is the property owners we have not been willing to invest in helping us to do concepts or wetlands plans and the like. And without those, it makes it really challenging for a developer or somebody else to come in and be able to do a development. So I would agree with you. I mean, working with Army Corps of Engineers or even our own wetlands folks, we can definitely do that. But again, let's say that the parcel behind Peterbilt, it's 57 acres. It's a huge parcel. It's probably 40 feet lower than the Berlin Turnpike. That's going to cost somebody a lot of money just to be able to do the initial just the engineering and the like. And so far, the property has been sitting there. I've had discussions. The Golden Triangle is another one, which is, it's got great potential, great location. But what can you do with it? What are the wetlands? And I continue to work with property owners on both sides of those. But it's a challenge because companies, if you look at some of the ones earlier that were on the list for distribution, they're looking for flat, dry farmland, which is what you have in Bloomfield, Windsor Locks, and Windsor, which means even though we have a great location, it puts us behind the 8 ball because of the wetlands. But I still continue to talk to folks and try to make things happen. It just takes a little bit longer because we need somebody who's willing to take the time to go through, do the wetlands. And we need property owners that understand that, again, it's going to take time. You're not going to close an industrial deal in 3 months. It could take 9 months, 12 months or further. And for some folks, that's been an education I've had to provide to them. Because if you've never owned a commercial property and you think it's like selling a house, it's not. It's not even close. And being on the Planning and Zoning Commission, you know there's a lot of things people need to do to get to that point.
The Golden Triangle, what is that currently zoned as?
Is that PLR?
No, SPDD.
SPDD, Special Design District. So basically, it's a commercial zone. But with the compilation of lots being the impetus for that zone, that it would allow for a regional design center, something that compiles the lots. And one of the things I was going to add was that some of these larger properties that have been mentioned also are owned, historically owned by a family that perhaps now is multi-generational with a number of property owners that own the piece.
Yeah.
Because
not
it's
just
been
one person.
divided up within the family as far as ownership percentages. So that sometimes is a challenge when discussing potential.
Yeah, everyone could be on board, but one can decide that. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I was just looking at the slides that you did. I think a lot of the successes that you hit on are things that have been recently done. And I just want to mirror what Joan said to economic development and Chris for bringing quality businesses to town. And I think that, you know, it's hard to make a comment about the future when I think what we're doing right now seems to be working. And I guess one of the plazas that you're talking about, which I would love to see some life brought back into, is where the old Mazos was.
Yeah.
I know that's a challenge.
The
But
Ferndale Plaza, over on the Chamberlain Highway.
I think all of Kensington would love to see that.
Like those.
Yeah, I mean, both that and of course, one of the TEDs is also like Ocean State Plaza. And, you know, you had the success with mixed use development on the Turnpike and also in the TOD area. You know, one of the things to think about is whether you want to allow some kind of mixed use development of those parcels to help revitalize them. Another issue I think is this, you know, it's mentioned the BTD zone. You know, you've obviously gone through a set of applications now. The question I guess I would ask is, are you satisfied with the percentage of commercial and type of commercial development that is in the mixed use projects, or do you think that needs to be tweaked? And we do have a task for FHI to work with us to look specifically at the BTD zone. But I think, you know, that's something to be thinking about. And another area where, you know, we've discussed is just the Kensington overlay districts. And, you know, we go from 26 units per acre in the core area 1, which is very limited, down significantly into the core area 2 densities. And should we be looking, you know, reevaluating the core area 2 and looking at, you know, being more aggressive or expanding the area around the train station that we want to see mixed use development in. So those are a few thoughts.
Yeah. I think the difficulty with the mixed use is that you're trying to project what businesses are going to be sustainable within that. And after a while, you come to a point with how many gas stations can we have? How many convenience stores can we have? And before it becomes basically overkill. And then you jeopardize, you know, success of one versus the other. I mean, it kind of puts the market out there pretty thin. And so every time I think about these businesses or these developments, I always wonder what's going to be sustainable, what's going to bring people off the road and bring people out of the condos or whatever. Is it going to be a restaurant or is it going to be a coffee shop or, you know, whatever? But it's because there's always that fear that the businesses will close up. And then as people drive by, they start to see the boarded up businesses or the for sale signs as opposed to activity. And that's what we're doing. We're just guessing. We're trying to project what's going to succeed in the future. We don't know.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably the same answer I would give for is the BTD zone effective. I mean, it's still very new. Obviously, we're seeing development, but at the same time, right now, we're asking where are there more commercial land? So, I mean, for me, I would love it all to be commercial, but I get that reality versus, you know, fantasy. No, so I don't. Obviously, it's getting the land developed, but would I like to see more commercial industrial there? Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the last point is that the last point on this slide is should we increase residential density to be allowed in the Kensington? And I would probably, my guess would be no, and I'll explain why. I think once you start increasing beyond the original conception, you jeopardize the overall conception of what you're trying to do. In other words, you almost pack 10 pounds into that 5-pound bag. So you ask yourself, what looks better? You know? And you're always going to say that the 5 pounds in the 5-pound bag looks best. The 10 pounds is like it's stretching the limit. And I guess I see it the same way. I see it that I want it to be an inviting balance, not only for the people who live in town or going to the town center, but people who are enjoying the town center. And I think if you overbuild it with residential, you just kind of you jeopardize different elements within town. You kind of drive them away. It just becomes too crowded.
If you go back to the beginning slides, it did show that we are behind other towns still with our residential to commercial industrial ratio.
Yeah, but I
Well,
don't want to sacrifice
The one thing I would add to that, Joan, is I don't think we're talking about increase to the density that we did, that the commission did for Steel Center.
Yeah.
But I think right now the density is like 4 units an acre. It's not final, hypothetically. Okay, let's say we have a property that we think would be great for redevelopment on Farmington Avenue. Right now at 4 units an acre, nobody's going to take on a project. Do I think it should be 24 units an acre? Probably not, but I would welcome an opportunity to say, hey, what can we do that would make sense? Because again, the first floor, by the way we have it written, is going to be commercial, residential above, and I think businesses do want to be near the people. So I think it's something, again, not a tomorrow thing, but to think about it in the court area too. If you look at the corner of New Britain Road and Farmington Avenue, you have those 2 buildings. I believe there's a barber shop in one of them.
Yes.
It's not a big property, but I could see that property being a great opportunity for apartments above commercial. But at the current density, I think they'd be able to do 2 apartments. No one is going to buy it and do that. If we were, again, understandable, we don't want to just randomly make the change to make the change. But if we'll bring in other people, it might be worth looking at that parcel and maybe some others along, or again, let's say if somebody compiled a couple properties on Farmington Avenue, and let's say a couple houses disappeared and you could get a mixed use development there. If we gave them the ability to do the density, that might make it more appetizing for somebody to come in and do that redevelopment, knowing the fact that we don't have the vacant land to build straight up on.
Mm-hmm. I see your point. I see your point. Difficult question.
To reword a little bit, I think some of the discussion has prompted the kind of transition that the core area 2 may have. The idea behind the core area 2 may have been as the core area 1 be that most dense in very close proximity to the train station, but radiate out from that with a little bit of a transition to the lower density zones that we have further out, and whether there was any opportunity for that to be successful or not, depending on, you know, what it would do and study it or not.
You know,
I think it's what,
and this brings to mind, across from paper goods, the development of paper goods is that open field that they use basically as a parking lot. But I think I remember at the time that paper goods was given the okay to do the whole residential thing, that they were supposed to be building an additional apartment complex in that open area.
so that was approved for townhouse apartments or dwellings across
Yeah.
across the street,
Yeah.
and was not pursued by the developer up to this time. Jim, we just looked at that. Is that still, do you recall whether we found out that approval is still effective? Do you
Yeah, I think
remember, you and I just talked about it?
Yeah, I think we think it's still active or could be extended, but the story there is that, you know, again, there was a dispute between the original developer and the homeowners association. The homeowners association has won in court to get the development rights to the plan. And there were still environmental issues on that site. And recently, you know, Chris and I have been working with the developer, with a potential buyer for the site, with the original developer and with the homeowners association. We've gotten a brownfields grant approved to do some additional environmental testing to get us to the next step. And we're working with all those parties now to try to get that thing moving.
Okay, yeah, so that would be a nice addition, especially with the pond right there. All right, anyway, okay. Hey, Brian, I'm gonna put the ball back into your court again. I know we kind of bounced around with your questions there, but.
That's it for the slides that we had on our end, so we can pass it back to Francisco.
All right. Miss Francisco, so. Francisco.
There, I just need to unmute myself.
All right.
Thanks, Brian. Before we go on, before we close out this discussion, the numbers are really favorable. You've had labor force growth, unemployment rate shrinking, jobs added, expansion of industries just in the past year alone, and particularly over the course of the 2 years in the pandemic, you've seen business expansions, groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings. You have it's clear that you have a very proactive town with respect to economic development, the work that Chris is doing, Jim and Maureen, you as a commission, not getting in the way of commercial development, industrial development. So it appears you're doing everything right. So, you know, our challenge as consultants is how could we possibly improve upon this situation, right? And maybe what we need to do is ensure that whatever you're doing, it keeps happening. And so my question to you would be, you know, what do we need to do to ensure that these trends continue? And that's the first part of the question. And the second part of it is this, you know, we're taking a look at the numbers. We're definitely seeing it in the numbers, but are these changes really perceptible to you as a resident? Or do you notice and feel the difference? Do you feel that the town is changing, that it's just more active from a jobs front or job opportunity front, economic development? has there been an impact to the landscape that really changes the way you perceive your community? So with that, with those two questions poised, I'd like to turn it back over to whoever would like to respond.
You know, I'll start in and maybe we can get the others to sort of jump on board, but and I'm speaking for myself because I am a native to Berlin. I was raised in Berlin, born in Berlin. And so when I see the changes coming around, I'm happy for them because there's growth. But I think I'm happiest because whoever's been on this commission, whoever's been with economic development, has always been very careful to balance out the old and the new. And I think you and I had talked about this several times, and that's my fear, is that you grow at such a rate that you lose who you are. And we're very unique in our town character and the streets and the roads and the switchbacks and the open space that we have, and we cherish it. And so we're very protective about it. I think that the growth is good along the turnpike. I think it'll be exciting once we see the downtown train area built up. I mean, we're all sort of biting our nails, hoping we do the right thing. But I think we're also very relieved that when we pull away from these arteries, when we head home, that we're heading home to our neighborhoods, our home. And that's what it feels like. We've always been thought of as being a cow town. And some people laughed at us about it. But you know what? People are drawn to that now because they come and they look and they see the farms and they see the open space and they're enchanted by that because they're like, wow, what a great place you have. You're not like every other place we've been to. You know, all the surrounding towns, and it's just all gobbled up, all the land is gone. And so that's the balance for us, Francesco. And I think you understand that we want to grow, we want people to have good jobs and good people living here, but we want to protect what we have.
Okay.
Anyone else, please? Peter. I'm calling Peter. Yeah. Do you have anything to add at this
Yeah,
point?
sure. So, I mean, I completely agree with your assessment. And I think that kind of ties into what I was alluding to earlier. It's just that, you know, with the shift in jobs and people working from home more often, or ideally if we had more industry where people are reporting to work, the unique nature of Berlin does make it an appealing place to live. And when we look at satellite towns around us, it is very unique. It is kind of a cow town. And I think that becomes very appealing to people looking for a space to live. And I don't think that's something you get in central Connecticut too often. You know, you look at Newington, you look at West Hartford, Meriden, et cetera. You have to go out east to get that. But you can have a piece of cow town here in Berlin and set in the heart of Connecticut, and also have access to Hartford, New Haven, et cetera. So that's very appealing. I think that should not be forgotten.
Yeah. Anyone else? Or Diane, do you have anything to add to that? I know I'm putting her on the spot, but I don't want to lose my commission of mine.
No, but thank you for remembering I'm here.
I do.
Thanks.
Being here. And Steve Biela's here too. Yay.
Well, I think too, one of the things that's been nice to see as far as the development side of it is even some of, like on Farmington Avenue, some of the vacancies that were there. So when we first moved into town, you know, seeing those filled in, but seeing them filled in with a lot of diverse businesses, you know, like you've got Thai food and Indian food and, you know, of course, pizza places, and just seeing the, you know, I don't have to leave town to go get something different, you know, having it here is beneficial. And I think even with, you know, the manufacturing businesses we have, the, you know, the small businesses that we still have in town, you know, it's beneficial for them because, gee, you know, let's run out for lunch. We don't have to go 2 towns over. I only get a half hour for lunch or 45 minutes for lunch.
Yeah.
So I get to Zoom right, you know, and stay in town and support the local businesses, which I think is great. So seeing the existing space that we have utilized a little differently, I think has been great.
Yeah. Steve Biella Jr., I know you're online, so do you have any comments at this time?
No, I just, Peter nailed it with being a cow town in central Connecticut. I'm a transplant, what you Berlinites call us, from New Britain. And I moved here because it was a cow town. So it's a beautiful little town. I hate to see it turn into a New Britain.
Yeah.
Just to make a quick comment, Joan, I mean, just to reinforce some of the things that have been said, I think in the 2003 and 2013 plans, we made very marginal increases in the commercial industrial zones at the margins, particularly near like Eversource, changing residential to commercial. So we've really and I don't think we have any specific recommendations along that line at this point. So we've really maintained that, the residential areas and not encroached into them with businesses and recognized their importance. And I think the issue has really been, how do we best use the industrial commercial areas we have? Are they zoned properly? I think one of the things the commission has done, and working with Chris especially, is allowing more flexibility of uses in some zones to accommodate kind of changing business trends and different types of businesses that are out there today. So, again, I think we're maintaining those boundaries and that balance, and we're just trying to figure out the best way to use those commercial industrial areas.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for all the work you've been doing with that, Jim, because I know that you've been with us for a long time, and you're sort of holding the line. That's a good thing. And at least we're doing it thoughtfully. That's the most important.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we do it with open minds.
Yeah.
So when Chris brings his business, I think that's really the best way to continue forward, is everything that we discuss, just keep an open mind and move forward.
Okay. I think that's. Yes. Francesco?
It must be
All
back in
right.
the snack. Oh, we might
I
have
think
lost.
he dropped, I think he dropped out.
He dropped out? Okay.
I think we might have lost him
Yeah.
with his
that's all right.
remote, so he'll probably come right back, but
Yeah.
he's.
We'll wait and see.
Should we have a date for our next meeting?
Yeah.
Brian, would you be able to go forward on this? Right, you're the one sharing, right? Let's see what the next slide brings.
Yeah, no
in
problem.
Francisco's
I'll move it
absence.
forward.
Okay.
Oh.
We have more. Okay, all right. We thought we were wrapping up. Okay.
So we'll kind of, between Jim and I think we can, Francesco seems to have come back, but
Yay, Francesco.
moving to the online survey, the closure of the housing plan survey
Yeah.
is this week.
I'm
Oh,
back.
he's back.
Oh, yay.
I blame Elon Musk for that, because let me explain. We had a satellite internet service that was terrible. We just switched over to Starlink, which is SpaceX satellite, and it's like 1,000 times faster and 1,000 times less reliable. Because they're still in the kind of the beta deployment phase of it, and we're promised that the service is going to get a little more predictable. What I was saying before my screen froze and I kept talking for 5 minutes without realizing no one was listening. Jim beat me to the punch with his comment about how your districts are. You feel pretty comfortable about the extents of your commercial industrial districts. And I was going to point out the fact that the most direct link between our discussion this evening and your plan of conservation and development is how we handle your future land use map, which really guides what the zoning should be. And so my question to you was going to be exactly what it was that Jim kind of put out there. I think he more or less answered it already. But I just want to hear from some of you as to whether or not you're on the same page. And that is, do you feel comfortable with the commercial and industrial districts you have right now with respect to their extents? Or do you see opportunities for expanding a district or converting an area that's currently zoned residential and maybe a bunch of vacant land with good access to, I don't know, Berlin Turnpike or 372 or something like that? Or do you see opportunities for expanding commercial industrial districts? And I think I'm hearing from Jim that it's probably where those districts are probably geographically where they need to be now. And it's a matter of working within the district with respect to flexibility and land uses. But I just want to put that out there one last time to the rest of you.
I think one challenge with the Turnpike is that the commercial corridor along it abuts a historical
Right.
corridor. So I mean, you really can't expand that way. And the same on the other side. It's not really as historical on the other side, but to expand, how would you do that and not really have a negative impact on the residential that's kind of built up there?
Okay.
I guess one area that comes to mind earlier mentioned is it's Overton Drive, a road like between Newport Ave and Mays Inn. It's like 3 residential properties that go in.
Brian, could you, while we're having this discussion, and maybe we're almost done with it, could you go up a few slides to the land use zoning map? Just so we have a reference. Somewhere back there. There it is. There it is. There we go. There we go. Okay. So I take it these districts are for those parcels, those district lines, the parcels within them, that's pretty much the most you think you could squeeze out of this without really, encroaching upon some residential areas or historic areas. Is that correct?
What I'm hearing is the commercial corridor along the Berlin Turnpike is relatively narrow.
Right.
Because of substantial residential development behind it's not very deep lots. So
Yeah,
that would be that
that.
corridor.
And should we be taking a look at, or should a conversation be had about extending the depth of that corridor away from the turnpike to include some of those properties that are on the backside? Admittedly, we haven't taken a look at that. Maybe there's just no place to go because you start to encroach upon neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But are there any opportunities? Is there any area that is just kind of floating and could be pulled into the commercial industrial orbit?
I think the bulk of it does have developed neighborhoods.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And are all the TED sites located entirely within a commercial industrial district, or are there TED sites that would require some rezoning to make them viable for commercial development?
That one has 2 different answers.
Okay.
They're all currently zoned commercial or industrial, the majority of it.
Right.
Could some of the zoning be tweaked? Yes.
Okay. So it's really about to Jim's point, it's really about potentially some more flexibility within the zoning and with respect to the uses that are allowed and maybe some of the other regulations, but the geographic limits, you feel these are pretty fixed. These are where they need to be. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Could you jump to the TEDS map?
Yeah, we could flip.
Too hard to find.
We have it.
There it was.
There it is. Okay.
There it is.
And so
I mean,
all these,
Maureen, with TED Site 11, I believe they're coming in pretty soon, correct? Which is industrial surplus.
Yes.
Um, 6 is
We have a
essentially fully developed.
rezoning. We
Yeah.
have the rezoning application for that area.
Yep.
11 at the corner of Deming and the southwest east corner of Deming and the Berlin Turnpike,
That where the road guy was?
where the rug guy
All right,
was.
where the road guy was at, selling the Christmas tree, okay. So there's something's coming in there,
Mm,
okay.
And across from 7, that's the Berlin Fairgrounds, right? The open space.
I'm looking.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I don't play it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I think that's what that is.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
not that familiar with that parcel. I know since, I don't know, maybe around 2013, BioPellet did an expansion there. I'm not really sure what else.
It's directly across from Fairgrounds, what's on the backside of some residential. You really can't see it.
Okay.
Yeah, 7, you
And-
got a lot of topography. You got the power lines cutting through it. You got the substation, a lot of going on there. And like you said, across the street was the Berlin Fairgrounds. I don't see any change happening there.
No.
I'm gonna have to bail out and go to the council meeting for a while, so maybe I'll catch you, or if not, everyone have a good night.
All right, Jim, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, I just wanted to firm up that point. It's one of the
Yeah.
more obvious places we would look for opportunities is to consider expansion of a commercial or industrial district. But what I'm hearing is that those boundaries are about as extensive as they can be. So instead, what we'll focus on maybe is what kind of changes to the regulations within those districts might be necessary to support the economic development that you'd like to see.
I think that makes a lot more sense because most of our zones have residential surrounding them.
Right.
And the ones that have not been developed, there are issues in place that potentially aren't necessary. I'm sure looking at the zoning would be a good way to try to help move them forward.
Okay.
A few
right,
of
great.
those TED sites have multiple zones within them currently. So, and then the geographic
Okay.
issues of the land itself.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, Maureen. Does the fact that some of these sites have multiple different commercial or industrial zones, do you see that as a barrier to redevelopment? Is that problematic, or does the town have enough flexibility to work with those applicants to establish, whichever regulation should be prevailing across the development site? Or
I've experienced the commission's willingness to look at the zoning and consider rezoning where it makes sense and is contiguous with other similar zones in order to expand in one way or another.
Yeah. So
There's flexibility.
Yeah, so the way you'd prefer to do that is have an applicant come forward with a request for a modification to the district based upon their development application, right? You don't necessarily need to get ahead of that and rezone before you know what you have coming to you. Is that correct?
I grab the term not necessarily because, having the zoning in place is always a good thing if it's the right zoning, but
Yeah,
if it's
yeah,
not
Okay.
right, then that's why we have flexibility.
right. Okay,
But that predictability of a plan that's good in the first place is good for everybody.
Yeah,
right. Okay,
we're very workable. We're a very nice commission. We're a good commission.
yeah,
We have our expectations.
yeah. Okay, good. All right, yeah, I think that satisfies my questions with respect to that. We could jump ahead back to the survey where we're at. We've it's not the first time we've talked about the survey. We've been sitting on this for a little while, mainly because the affordable housing survey had recently been open. It just closed out, and they had a really good response rate. And we didn't want the two surveys to get confused by people. So we just want to give that a little time to get closed out before we ask people to participate in the survey again. With that said, Maureen, help me out. I can't recall. Did we distribute the draft survey link, the internal link, to our committee members here?
I don't remember. I think maybe with the last committee meeting,
Okay.
at least 1 or 2 meetings ago, I would
Okay.
suggest, given that we redistribute it.
Yeah.
Often and as amended.
I think we should do that, and I'll resend that link to you, Maureen, so that you can send out to everyone. And please go ahead and just take it yourself. It will be kind of a test run of it, but it will record your results. And if there's a question we're not asking a question in the right way, and these can be really, really nuanced. We want to know before we invite the rest of the town to participate. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Next. The draft vision statement. We don't need to reread through this. It's continues. We continue to hold the line on this. I think we agree we don't want it to be any longer. And we'll just add, as we have opportunities to revisit it, we'll continue to make little adjustments to make sure it says exactly what you want to say. So we continue to hold that in place. Next slide. And our next steps. So our next steps are to get that survey out there and do promotion around it, which includes a press release, social media content, and likely, realistically, I think mid-February, I need to coordinate with Maureen and Jim on that as to exactly when the best timing, but mid-February probably. We continue to coordinate are planning to coordinate key stakeholder interviews. Eric and Brian have conducted a couple already specific to economic development. And I'll be coordinating with Jim and Maureen about scheduling other similar type interviews. We continue to develop mapping, coordinating with New England Geo on that. So Eric and Brian are continuing their economic development work and polishing up some of the numbers on stuff as information comes in. They're very focused right now on housing. That's the subject of our next meeting. And so if we go to the next slide, this is how our schedule plays out for the next couple of months. Economic development, check. Housing and affordable housing will be later this month. In March, we'll talk about facilities and infrastructure, and then move on to mobility at our April meeting. And that'll conclude our discovery process. And then we'll have to switch gears and start thinking about plan development, which will include identifying priorities and goals and all that sort of stuff. And finally, next slide. Our next meeting is, and I'm going to insert tentatively in front of this, is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, February 24th at 6 p.m. And the reason it's tentative is because Jim and Maureen are looking to potentially take the affordable housing plan meeting, which was scheduled for the 23rd. And because we are discussing housing at our next meeting on the 24th, of merging those two, so holding a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Plan Committee, and we need to figure out who wins. Do they get to keep their date, or do we get to keep ours? And we're fighting to keep our date because we have it in our calendars already. So, but we'll do what we need to do to hold the meeting. So stay tuned for that. I anticipate within the next week we'll have that figured out.
So can I just add two things real quick? The Affordable Housing Plan Committee, or the Housing Plan Committee, is meeting tomorrow night. So we expect some feedback from them hopefully tomorrow on the date, but would like feedback from this committee as to whether or not the 23rd is doable of February for this committee. And the other thing is, I just want to give a shout out that these guys, the consultants, also worked on the affordable housing plan survey, and from their statistics, I understand our success rate with responses is pretty high.
Yeah.
Over 700, I understand, right? Which is a pretty good response rate for the online survey and paper surveys that were distributed around town. And we're just real hopeful we can keep that push for the POCD survey.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was tremendous response rate. It was very good.
As I remember, I think our number in 2013 was quite a bit lower. So I wanted to give that shout out.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Maureen.
So we are tentative for the 24th, and what's the backup day?
The 23rd is the day that the Affordable Committee is already meeting. They're meeting on Wednesdays, regularly on Wednesdays. So, and they've created their schedule out for several months where our date tends to float a little more.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I got in my calendar list.
All right, and so that concludes our presentation. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Joan. It's your meeting.
Okay, well, geez, thanks a lot. And I just want to thank everyone for the participation. A great presentation. So job well done, guys, all of you. And I guess that will be a wrap. Unless there's anything else, then we'll see everyone hopefully on the 24th of February. And I guess everyone, make sure you do your homework and get home and take those surveys online. Right? Got it. Okay.
All right, good night. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a good one.
Right.
All right,
Good night.
bye.
Thank you.
Good night.